Odell Beckham. Maybe he doesn't pan out. Who knows? Cleveland right now is a total mess. Shock me, shock me, shock me with your repeated Cleveland behavior. Mike Silver of NFL Media reported that Jarvis Landry and other Browns players were screaming at the Cardinals sideline on Sunday. The Arizona Cardinals, who less than a year ago, fired their first-year head coach and hired Cliff Kingsbury, doing a great, very impressive job, by the way. Yelling, "Come get me," which is like the new thing that people yell in NFL games. Like, "Come get me. Get me out of this disaster." A phrase that Odell Beckham had reportedly uttered to other teams in pregame warmups previously in the season. Landry was caught in a spat with Ryan's boy, Freddie Outhouse. So we don't call him Freddie Kitchens. He's Freddie Outhouse. Brady liked it.
Brady likes it. Yeah.
And
there we go.
Kareem Hunt sort of thrashed him a little bit. Yeah, I feel like there's some plays that everybody didn't leave their 110% out there the whole play. Through the whistle. And all I got to do is, and we've all got to do that if we want to be successful. We got to finish. You got to come out strong, and that's usually our thing. They did not come out strong. Where are we at in Cleveland, Brady? To blow it all up again?
Go to Ryan first. I'll respond after Ryan.
Did I say
Thank you, Brady. Someone loves Freddie Outhouse. I've worked long and hard on that. These guys dumped all over me. Continue the Outhouse pun going there. Could it be Freddie Upper Decker? Could be Freddie Away Game. There are a million of these things he could go with Freddie Kitchens. Look, man, to carry on the analogy, the Cleveland is an S show, right? I mean, we can all agree on that. There was a report that Odell Beckham was actually asking the Steelers to come get him as well. I mean, think about this for a second. Doug Hodges, you're like, you know what? I can play with that guy. Mason Rudolph, yeah, I'm all right with him too. I don't know where you go from here. There's a report, I think yesterday, the day before, that Freddie Kitchens is going to be back. It sounds like John Dorsey is for that. It's unclear if Jimmy Haslam, the owner, is for it. It sounds like he was stomping around after the game, after that loss in Arizona, which was totally embarrassing loss. I don't know where you go from here if you continue to move forward with Freddie Kitchens, because it's not clear what direction he's going in and obviously what direction the program's going in. Which is, I mean, I'm sure it's super frustrating for Brady as a Browns fan and Browns fans everywhere, because this was supposed to be the year they turned the corner. Looks like they hired the wrong guy. I don't think bringing in Odell Beckham was necessarily a bad thing, but you got to figure out a way to use them. You got to figure out a way to use Jarvis Landry and make it all come together. And that was sort of our big concern in August. Can all these pieces come together? Can Baker Mayfield handle the pressure? It doesn't really seem like he's been able to do that. And, the things have really sort of gone south since Myles Garrett clubbed Mason Rudolph over the head, and even though they won that game, it felt like a loss, and it's been pretty much losing ever since.
Yeah, they've gone right down the toilet, I guess, in that house or bathroom, whatever. That was amazing. Kudos to you, Ryan. Kudos to you.
Thank you. Picture that as proof to Sean and Breach that you thought that joke was funny, because you know what? That thing went over like a turd in a punch bowl when he said it the first time.
I love it, man. I think it's great. I love Ryan. I wish Ryan talked more on this podcast.
Finally.
So I think that's the toughest thing about this, and I've talked about this a couple weeks ago, is just there was never any culture set in place there. Like this is the difficulty I think Jimmy and D Haslam have, is they're at a crossroads now where once again they may feel like, was this the right hire? It's tough to feel like it was, considering the results and how things have played out this year. And so maybe they feel differently behind closed doors in that organization, and maybe that tells a different story, and they want to give it another year. I would be okay with that, just because, again, I hate removing a head coach after 1 year. I hated what the Cardinals did last year. Although that being said, like, they do look like they're in a better spot this year. And if that's what this is ultimately about, is wiping the slate clean, building back with someone that can ultimately get your quarterback and your team playing up to its potential, then there is definitely an argument to be made for moving on. The problem is how Cleveland goes about doing that versus Arizona are two separate deals. Arizona didn't necessarily have a track record of blowing through coaches year after year or every 2 years. That has unfortunately been Cleveland's issue since they've come back in 1999, both under Randy Lerner and under Jimmy and D Haslam. So the problem with that is you never instill a culture. One of the most eye-opening things that I ever experienced when I got traded and I went to Denver was you immediately felt from the equipment staff, for example, Flip or Steve Antonopoulos, we called him Greek with their training staff, or the strength staff back then with Rich Tootin, there was this culture that was already built. There was a standard. There was an expectation. Everyone there, whether they were upstairs and they worked in the front office or community service, whatever it was, there was a standard and a bar that was set, and they would continue to keep trying to push it and raise it. And they knew what their job was. They knew what they were expected to do. In Cleveland, because you have so much turnover, it's hard to then set in that sort of environment or culture where everyone understands the expectations and then knows what their job is and then how they get there, right? And so that's the problem, is if they start over again, they run right back into that issue with whoever the next head coach is. Because once you bring in a new head coach, then you've got to play a different scheme. Maybe it's a different technique for that player, because those players on the roster might not fit what they want to do. And so if that's the case, then they got to bring in new players. Well, what happens when you bring in new players? Look at Baker Mayfield this year. We talked about how Odell Beckham, maybe hasn't quite worked out, even though we do like the fact that they brought him there, and I'm with you, Ryan. But he was training on his own in the offseason. He wasn't necessarily with Baker Mayfield quite as much. And when you go and really break down the film, and in particular this past week, go look at the interception that he threw to Patrick Peterson on that post route. I don't know if it was the fact that they haven't developed enough chemistry over the course of the year or before the year, but the throw was off. Coming into the NFL, I thought Baker Mayfield was one of the more accurate quarterbacks I'd ever seen. One of my comps for him actually was Drew Brees, because I think he is that kind of accurate quarterback. But somewhere between last year and this year, whether it's a clean pocket, whether it's pressure, whatever the case may be, not only is he not anticipating quite as much, he's not handling that pressure quite as well and throwing more accurate footballs or catchable footballs. And that, to me, more speaks to the fact that he's not on the same page with the guys who are out there running routes. And so, is it Freddie Kitchens' offense and the tweaks or changes, or Todd Monken coming in there? Maybe. Is it the offensive line? I'm sure they've played a portion of that to blame. But all these things that have been an issue because it hasn't come together, and that's what you expect when you have this much change. But what we've seen and what's been revealed is when adversity strikes, there's no culture in place for this team to be able to withstand it, forge ahead and move forward, and block out all the noise, and then be able to find success or build off of that adversity to become better. So that, to me, and I know it's long-winded, and I'm sorry I took up so much time talking about it, but that's unfortunately the situation that the Browns are in now, and that's the decision that both Jimmy and Dee Haslam are faced with moving forward.
Is it yeah, I think it's interesting that you mentioned Brees, because I do think there's a reasonable comp there. They're both very productive in college. Played in sort of Brees is. I think Purdue was kind of a spread offense of sorts when Brees played there. It wasn't like a full pro style system or anything. It wasn't Lincoln Riley, Oklahoma. But they were very accurate passers. Shorter, stayed in the pocket, liked to move around a little bit. Could run if they needed to. And Brees, like his first 2 years in San Diego, completed less than 60% of his passes. Now, Baker was up a little bit higher last year, like 65, but we're also talking like a 17-year difference in the NFL. I sort of wonder, is it possible that it is a culture issue with Freddie Kitchens, and that if they could get the right offensive coach, that it could really spark Baker Mayfield to greater things? Are you worried that there's permanent damage here with what could happen to Baker, both in the locker room, outside the locker room, with his learning skills and all of that?
I'm worried that there's the chance that he doesn't grow from all this. That's what I'm worried about. I think when you look at some of the comments, like the medical staff stuff, we've talked about that, it's just unnecessary. And, when you look at last year, granted, when he came in and we started from that point moving forward, he really did spark the team, and he had a phenomenal rookie year. But whatever took place over the course of the offseason, at some point he really bought into this, I am who I am. Well, that's fine. But if you are who you are today, and that's who you think you're going to be tomorrow, then you're not going to be successful in the NFL, because it's hard to frickin' make it. Even when you have a perfect foundation scenario around you. For example, not to get off on a tangent, but for as great as Drew Brees has been, one of the greatest passers, most prolific of all time in the NFL, he's got one Super Bowl. And so winning is not just about you and your performance. It's about being able to raise the level of everyone else out around you. And look, and I think Drew Brees has done that. I think he should have been playing in a Super Bowl last year, if not for a terrible missed call. But if you look at Baker Mayfield and how that applies to him, if he can't look to see how he needs to mature and grow as a leader and as the face of that franchise, and how he can help everyone else grow and become better, then it's not going to matter because they're not going to win enough games, and you're going to look at it and say, well, yeah, obviously, that hindered him or that caused him to not be the player we thought he was going to come in, going to be coming in from Oklahoma. And so this all, to me, weighs on how Baker Mayfield looks at himself and everything else moving forward. If he looks at this year and he looks back at what he said and what he's done and how he trained and how he prepared, and he tries to build from that and improve from those mistakes and realize that you can't just be the guy that you are or say unapologetically, like, I am who I am, you just have to deal with it. No, man. You got to be better in every aspect. And so if he makes those strides, like, I think he could be a guy that we're talking about next to Drew Brees as far as some of these stats and how prolific he could be as a passer. Probably along with, Patrick Mahomes, who is his contemporary. But, that to me that I think that's where he needs to focus on, is just how he can grow and improve and get better from all this. And even with how he is off the field and as a leader and how he's viewed, I think, amongst his teammates. Because I also hear from some people there that there are some teammates who are tired of how he's been and how he's conducted himself throughout the course of this year.
All right, Ryan, you can take whoever you want on the current Browns, and you can take them from the kitchen and shove them in the outhouse. Who are you tossing out of the house and out to the old toilet?
The old dookie shoot. Look, here's the that's what we call the outhouse in North Carolina, Brinson. Not what you're thinking. Huh? Yeah, you like that? So look, I'll follow up. What?
Nothing. Go ahead.
I'll follow up what Brady said. So look, if you're going to stick with Freddie Kitchens, and if that's your plan, if you don't want to have turnover, number one, let someone else call plays because he can't handle all this. And number two, you can actually take a page from the Steelers, where Jimmy Haslam was a minority owner at one point. The Steelers have the infrastructure in place to handle guys like Antonio Brown. And when Antonio Brown got to be too much, they moved on from him. The Browns do not have that infrastructure. If they don't feel like they can handle Odell Beckham, who is in no way, shape, or form the headache that Antonio Brown is, at least as far as we know, move on from him. Trade him, get something for him, build a team around Baker Mayfield where everyone's on the same page, everyone's trying to win. Simplify things for Freddie Kitchens in terms of what he has to do every day as a head coach, not just as a play caller, because he can't handle it, and then go from there because there's too much going on. There's too much sort of nonsense from the outside coming in. Brady talked about Baker sort of not being the leader he should probably be at this point in his stages, year two of his career, and get back on track to playing football because everything else is too much. Quit wearing dumb T-shirts out the night before big games and quit doing the little things that come back to bite them every single week. And hopefully that will be a good starting point if you're insistent on sticking with Freddie Kitchens for one more year.
Can I ask this? I mean, if you look at every other quarterback now, obviously you have to I'd say you have to exclude Rosen just because he hasn't been playing quite as much and he was dealt a terrible hand with everything. But I will say this, I think he's actually
two terrible hands, really.
Right. And he actually has handled it with class, probably much better than maybe, dare I say, Baker would have if that was his scenario. But of all the quarterbacks in that class, I mean, you kind of look at Baker in comparison to them and forget about the on-the-field stuff, but how each one of them has kind of led their team or at their time handled adversity. I think if you rank them, you'd probably rank him as 5. Right now, I know Lamar hasn't faced that much adversity because they won the division last year, went in the playoffs and all that. But
got booed in a playoff game. I mean,
but I'm just saying, like, if you were going to rank them, like, he'd probably be last of all those guys with how they've grown or how they looked coming from college to the rookie year to year 2. Am I wrong in saying that?
Not in the slightest. I mean, I think, when you look at Josh Allen, he's been blue collar, grinded, been exactly what Buffalo wanted when he showed up and worked hard. He had a rough offensive line. He's been mocked like social media and by draft Twitter and whatever, and he's taken it all in stride. He's worked his tail off and he's gotten a lot better. Lamar Jackson, was told to go be a wide receiver and never like Baker would have clapped back at everybody in sight. And Lamar's made some jokes, but only en route to winning an MVP. He's been a great leader by all accounts in that locker room. I think when you look at who am I missing here?
Darnold.
Yeah, God. I mean, Darnold went out and made out with somebody, but I'm not going to ding him for that. Like mono, we're going to bang him for mono here?
He battled through mono well. If you look at him kind of on the other side, once he had the game, and think about it, he saw ghosts too. Like he might be in the next Ghostbusters movie that's going to come out.
No, yeah, I think Darnold's done a good job, and I mean, Baker's dead last. I mean, the other thing that Baker did that, and I know this sounds stupid, this like kind of like an old man hot take type of thing, but like, did everybody have to appear in GQ this offseason? Like, do we really need that? Couldn't that time have been better spent getting on the same page with Odell Beckham?
I've been in GQ before. Not going to hate on him for that. So I'm 100%. That stuff gets blown out of proportion anyway because they always fit it within your schedule where it doesn't make as much of a deal about it. My concern is, like, forget about that. It's just not finding enough time to get Odell Beckham to connect with them so that they could kind of be more on the same page because, again, it's not like a guy who's going to play a ton during the preseason and training camp. So that's more of an issue to me. Like I don't care about the endorsements or commercials because again, like you're taking money out of his hand. Like, are you not gonna sign that deal for who's the insurance company that he's done some commercials? Is it Progressive?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look. First off, they're funny commercials. He's a good actor.
Yeah.
But I was just saying, like, who knows how much he got paid for that? There's no way you're going to tell him not to take that opportunity to take a day or two and film it in his own stadium, right?
I don't mind that. I don't mind the idea that's like gets your cash in your pocket. Wait, were you in GQ for like, was it a Brady Quinn profile or was this the TiVo thing?
No. That wasn't even that. Like what you're referring to wasn't even the same magazine. This is for like when we were coming out of the draft, there was like a number of quarterbacks or young quarterbacks too that were in the league that they did like a photo shoot and stuff like that for.
They did one of those in like 2009. It was like internet's hottest bloggers, and Wilson and I were both on that.
I could see Wilson being in there.
All right,
Thank you.
August.
Hey, by the way, Brinson, there's one more name for the list that Brady didn't address. How has Mason Rudolph handled his adversity, Brady?
By the way, I just found this GQ thing. This is incredible. Vince Young running shirtless, holding a football through the forest. Matt Leinart laying on a pool with a bikini clad older woman who looks to be what's her name in
Bo Derek from Tommy Boy.
Bo Derek, thank you. It looked like a Bo Derek lookalike with a bottle of champagne next to him and some of those like Nike shower flops and a Nerf football. Brady Quinn with like quasi-long coiffed hair in a white like tee hanging what appears to be like a Barcelona coffee shop, or maybe this is a James Dean type of thing. I'm not sure what the vibe is here.
I think that's what they were going for, yeah.
Jamarcus Russell in a fur coat walking away from a private jet. And oh boy. Ben Roethlisberger in the rain in a car. This is creepy. That's not a good look. Tony Romo is a farmhand. These are freaking amazing.